Now, I want to talk about one of the tools that is sorely underutilized, especially in reactive organizations, but they all use them. They all make us do them. Let's talk about the tool engagement and pulse surveys. Do you know why everybody is always pushing so hard to get as many people taking this survey as possible? Why is it that they spend money on gift cards and pizza parties and making sure that you remind you every other day to sit down and take this survey? Does anybody really understand the point behind these engagement surveys? Because most people have no idea why these engagement surveys are so important. And really, that's a problem, especially as a leader. But nobody ever takes the time to explain why they're important. Because it really doesn't matter whether the comments are negative or positive. It doesn't matter what numbers come back. What really matters is how many people took the actual survey. Because it is all about the engagement. The most important piece of this is even though somebody is frustrated, and even though you may have low marks on that survey, at least they cared enough to give their opinion. Because leaders can do something with that. They can actually take somebody who's frustrated and they can take a department who's frustrated and fix it. Because at this point, people still care. People will still take the time to give their input. And that is a manageable piece. That means that there is still connection, there's still investment in the organization, and there's still emotional thought that they can actually fix something within this organization. That's why that's important. Where this becomes a problem is when people do not engage anymore and people don't care to share their opinion. That disengagement is more dangerous than anything else, because when somebody is disengaged, they already have one foot out the door. When people become neutral with their answers just because they want to get that pizza party, it gives a false sense of security to the organization. Meanwhile, there are deeper rooted problems that will never get fixed because this survey says everything's okay. But the reality is, it is so much worse, because the team that used to be engaged and used to give their opinion, now they're just going to think nothing changes. Nobody listens. Leadership is not going to pay attention to this. If I even say anything, it's pointless. Once that emotional disconnect happens, that signal starts to disappear. And when that signal disappears, a leader cannot keep tabs on something that doesn't exist. Because silence is not always stability. Sometimes silence is resignation. So if you have a strong leader in a department, they're going to use a couple of different pieces involving these surveys in order to be able to assess where their team is. Number one, they're going to look at the overall score. They're going to see how negative or positive it is. However, they are going to compare it with the comments that were left, if the comments were given, and they're going to compare it with the engagement percentage. Because if it had a low engagement percentage and a neutral answer, more than likely, this was not an accurate survey. The other thing that they're going to look at is they're going to look at their engagement number the year of, and then they're going to also look at it the year before. The other thing that they're going to utilize in this is their turnover percentage. If you put those three things together, you can get a very clear picture as to your department health. Even though it may look bad, the reality is if you have lower scores with strong participation and emotional engaged feedback, that is much healthier than neutral responses with lower participation and emotional detachment. Because the first group still thinks that it's important to engage and they still want to speak out and try to make a difference. Versus the other group, they just stop believing that any of this matters. And when people stop talking, leaders lose visibility. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have a really frustrated team or your team is disengaged, there's a couple of different things that you can do and that strong leaders do to try to help fix these things. And number one, and the most important, they address situations early. If they see a problem, they're going to pull people in and they're going to have the conversations. Avoidance is going to be your biggest problem when it comes to these types of teams, because when you avoid the conversation, nothing is ever going to get fixed and it's only going to get worse. The second thing, strong leaders, they're going to investigate patterns. They're going to watch their people and they're going to see how those people engage. And if they start to notice a change or they start to feel tension, they're going to start taking care of the problem quickly. Again, this is going to go back to remedy the problem before it becomes big. don't avoid. 3, and this is very, very important in reactive organizations. A strong leader is going to slow everything down. They're going to take control of the tempo of their department. Yes, everything around them may be on fire, and that's okay. But they are going to slow themselves down, and they're going to start working methodically through getting their team structured. And there's a multitude of things that you can do to manage that and make that happen. It involves communication style. It involves tempo of change. Though change is inevitable, and it is very important, if you structure it in a way where it systematically comes out at the same time, whether that is monthly, whether that is quarterly, and not just randomly on a Tuesday or randomly on a Friday, your team can prepare for change, and when they can be prepared, they're going to be more willing to manage with it. And lastly, they're going to analyze. They're not going to come up with a quick reaction in order to make a decision. They're going to look at something and look at something completely and make sure that they've looked at the pieces before they make a decision. Though they're going to be deliberate in that decision, it is not going to be reactionary. Crisis is not chaos. It's a signal system. And leadership is the ability to recognize these signals before the organization pays the price for ignoring them. These leaders who stabilize organizations are not the loudest people in the room. They are the people who are paying attention early, because when the problems become obvious, you're already behind. If you want more leadership framework around pressure communication, organizational stability, crisis leadership, operational trust, and reactive organizations, subscribe to BA Solutions, because strong leadership is not built during chaos. It's built by recognizing the signals before chaos starts.